Thursday night at 10 p.m. Why so late? Because around this time, all your other classes should be over. In yeshiva, they have this thing called mishmar. So mishmar, it's to keep you from trouble. Thursday nights, at least in Israel, and some Jewish neighborhoods in America also, is the Jewish Friday night, because everything is closed on Shabbos, and Shabbos is another type of celebration. So Thursday night in Israel and Jerusalem, people usually go out to Ben Yehuda, and they get into trouble, this and that. So the rabbis, they'll make cholent, they'll play guitars, and they'll try to keep people in the yeshiva to learn. So we're trying to keep you out of the street. We don't want you there flipping over cop cars and doing God knows what. Like all the shows we do, the show's only as interesting as you guys make it. So you guys are free to talk. You're free to disagree with me.
Thank you.
And all this is being recorded. So if you're going to disagree with me, make it good, because I'll make you famous.
I guess that's a good way to open up the show today, is speak about reasons not to convert. Judaism isn't, I wouldn't say for everyone too. I would agree with that. So how would we, I guess, siphon that out? How would we, how could someone know whether or not Judaism might not be for them?
If you're comfortable being a Noahide, let's say, if you're comfortable not doing too many laws, I've heard people not wanting to convert because they can't do without hamburgers or cheeseburgers or bacon. And that probably means that you're not really equipped to be religious in any sense. Because if you can't give up cheeseburgers, how are you going to give up women when you're married, or alcohol when you're trying to stay sober? And so, like, if you have a problem struggling with your nature, you have to get that under control before you come into serious religion. You have to learn how to walk before you can run in every aspect of life. But that doesn't mean just Judaism. That means any higher level learning is not for you. You have to tame your nature to a certain extent before you can come to a more serious belief system, to a more sophisticated belief system. And I think Judaism is the most sophisticated religion of the other two great monotheistic religions. Unless you're serious, we don't want you to convert. Absolutely. However, if you do convert and you're not serious, you're still Jewish. You're halachically Jewish. Not that you're important to God in any way. One only becomes special to God. It says that you'll be my Am Segula, you'll be my treasured people if you keep my mitzvot. So only because you're born Jewish, only because you convert to Judaism doesn't mean you're special to God or you're in a covenant with God. That's something that is only between you and God. God knows if you're not keeping mitzvot. God knows if you did it for a woman or for a guy. Not that that makes the conversion any less valid. It just means that it's just legal. It's not spiritual. It's not validated by God. You're not emulating the Israelites on Mount Sinai, who said, we'll do and we will listen, who followed God with their lives on the line. They could have been annihilated by Pharaoh, but they trusted God and they trusted his messenger, and he got them through that.
So anyways, I'm a former Christian, now a Noahide, living in Taiwan. I'm nowhere near a Jewish community, so I do a lot of research on my own. And one of my pet projects is to retranslate the Bible and try to come up with some sort of Noahide commentary. So far, it's taken me about 2 years to get to Exodus, and I'm just really here to listen and learn.
Oh, welcome.
Don't know very much. Yeah.
That's interesting, a Noahide commentary to the Bible.
All right. I personally think that's an exercise in futility. I don't think that...
I would tend to agree. It's very difficult, and it's not really going anywhere.
Yeah, you have to be very creative in your writing to make it go further or past the first 4 chapters or 6 chapters of Genesis. It's just not there. I'm not going to deny that the notion of a ger toshav is a status that appears in the Chumash, in the Torah, but it doesn't seem like it's anything other than just a category of docile Gentiles. That's it. There's nothing promised to them. There's nothing to aspire within that movement to. Now, like, if someone wants to embrace that, go right ahead. The notion that they are considered righteous Gentiles is only a rabbinic notion. It's not in the Torah. As a matter of fact, the Torah doesn't even prohibit idolatry on them. That's also a rabbinic notion. I'm a rabbinic Jew. I believe in this. But even within the rabbinic, the idea that they get a share in the world to come is what people call midrash, agadah. It's folklore and legend. It's not 100%. It's maybe they do, maybe they don't. I mean, I think they do. But they'd have to keep more than 7 laws to convince me of that. Just because I think it's kind of silly to assume that anyone is. I totally
agree with you. The problem that I'm running into is that as I want to learn more, and I go to Judaism, there really isn't any kind of, ger toshav aside, there really isn't any Noahide community that is authoritative. And if I want to get involved in the community, and if I want to get involved in outreach and helping people, I really don't feel I can do that as a Noahide. So I'm just here to listen and learn.
Okay. Well, perhaps you should start identifying yourself as a Jew in transition or a Gentile in transition into Judaism. Consider yourself converting to Judaism, which means that the whole Bible applies to you. I mean, you've accepted the Torah now, like at least the Hebrews accepted it on Mount Sinai, the Hebrew and the mixed multitude, which would make you as Jewish as they are. You're not halachically Jewish, but you could still be in a covenant with God. You don't have to think that only 4 or 6 chapters apply to you, but the whole Bible applies to you. Right? The whole notion of conversion is a later notion in the Jewish world. There's no conversion in the Bible. What the Hebrews and the mixed multitude accepted on Mount Sinai wasn't conversion. They entered a covenant with God. Converting to Judaism is a legal process. It means that you're entering Israel as a legal citizen now. You're becoming a citizen of Israel, but that's something that was determined by the court to determine who they would adjudicate against the 613 laws. But it has nothing to do with accepting Torah into your life, deciding to keep Torah. No, you're making a public declaration in front of the Jewish people, flesh and blood, that you are one of them and you're subject to their laws as executed by the Sanhedrin. That's it. Yeah, don't identify as a Noahide. You're not a Noahide. A Noahide really, according to the biblical narrative, is someone who doesn't know enough to convert, someone who doesn't want to convert, who chooses to remain a Gentile. This notion that a Noahide could possibly be someone who's convinced that the Torah is true, but still chooses to only keep 2% of it, that's only something that they've developed because they politicize conversions. Now that conversions take years instead of days because of the state of Israel, the rabbis asked the question, like, what do you call all these people who are in the process of conversion, whether there's a conversion program in their neighborhood or not? Well, let's call them Noahides. They started writing literature, and there's not even much written about it. They started writing prayer books and basically creating a whole ism out of the Ger Toshav existence in Torah when there wasn't one, and there's not supposed to be one. According to the Rambam, it says that there's a prohibition that Noahides should not create a new religion or make the lifestyle of a Ger Toshav into an ism, that they either have to convert to Judaism and accept all of Torah or just live by 7 laws that they're executed for breaking any one of them. Anyways, welcome.
I appreciate that. We do have a question on the outside chat by Shimshon Samson. Perhaps you can mention that conversion to Judaism is not converting to a club. The emphasis is trying to act like you grew up culturally Jewish. It is not acting like you grew up culturally Jewish. The emphasis should be living Torah. Well, I guess it's more of a statement than a question.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
It's more about living a Torah lifestyle. That's really what it means to be a Jew. Living Torah.
I agree 100%. I mean, you have to tell that to the rabbis who disagree. I mean, there's rabbis who think that being Jewish means that your mother's Jewish. That's being halachically Jewish, but that doesn't mean that you're in any covenant with God. Karl Marx, Trotsky, Larry David,
Barbara
Streisand.
Right.
These are all halachic Jews, but they're not in any covenant with God. They don't believe in God. So, of course, Kabbalistic Judaism runs with this notion that what makes you special is the blood and the soul within you and not what you believe and how you behave. But that's not an idea that appears in the Torah. In the Torah, we have the notion of karet. It says when someone's like karet, that means they're cut off from the Jewish people. So we even tell the evil son during the Passover Seder that if he was in Egypt, he wouldn't have been redeemed. That this whole notion that only because you happen to have a Jewish pedigree that you're special to God is something that only Kabbalah believes in or Kabbalists believe in. And they believe that within every Gentile, there's like a Nazi trying to get out because they teach that the soul of a Gentile is on the level of an animal and the soul of a Jew, well, they say, Helek Elokam Mimal Mamish, that the soul of a Jew is actually part of God. I'm not a big fan of Kabbalah. I don't believe or teach Kabbalah. I mean, you could believe in Kabbalah. It doesn't matter to me as long as you make a distinction between that and what the Torah says.
Mario asked in the side chat here, what about Reformed conversion? Is this not a great start since from the beginning there always been different ways to be Jewish and not just one? So it's like a 2 question in one. Reformed conversions, and are there multiple ways of being Jewish?
I think Reform takes the cake for how different it's been as an alternative to traditional Judaism. It's not like being an Essene or a Sadducee or even a Karaite, people who actually believe in a God and believe that God authored the Torah. and believe in all the stories and the commandments that appear in the Torah. The Reform movement is the first movement that is just about culture. You don't even have to believe in God to be a Reformed Jew. They ordain gay clergy, they marry gay couples, they perform intermarriages. It doesn't qualify to be a valid alternative to traditional Judaism within Judaism. Heck, even Christians keep more commandments than Reformed Jews do, whether they acknowledge it or not. Conservative Judaism is a little different. I still can't find anything within the conservative charter that actually goes against halakha. There's many things that go against tradition, like not having like a separation of mechitza, making women rabbis. Okay, that may go against tradition. It doesn't actually go against an actual rabbinic law or Torah law. But Reform Judaism flips everything upside down. There could be many nice Reform Jews and nice Reform rabbis, and I've known a lot of Messianic Jews who go to Reform synagogues. But if they keep Torah, that's in spite of the tenets of Reform Judaism. Don't forget, the first graduating class of Hebrew Union College, they created what was known as the Shrimp Affair. The first graduating class, I believe it's in Ohio, where Hebrew Union College is, they had oyster, they had lobster, they had shrimp, just to show where they stand. It's not, in my opinion, a valid alternative to any type of kosher thought or kosher lifestyle. Now, could it help you get to know other Jews and know how Jews think and Jews live? Sure. If you want to consider it every time you go to shul, like a Reform shul, just another Semitic heritage festival, then fine. You can enjoy Woody Allen movies and Jerry Seinfeld shows and still feel Jewish and have a bageled existence, but don't confuse it with Torah. It's not a valid alternative to traditional Judaism from a Torah perspective.
Very good. That's a good question. It's not exact. There isn't really multiple forms of Judaism. Really, at the end of the day, halakha is halakha, and as long as you do what the halakha prescribes you to do, you're good to go. That's really
I don't care about titles. Don't forget, Orthodox is a title that the Reform invented to make fun of traditional Jews. Orthodox Jews were never called Orthodox Jews, so the Reform called them Orthodox. So if you happen to convert in a Reform synagogue and the people who converted you are able to judge in a halachic manner, where they're not like pasul edom, they're not disqualified witnesses, then it's a kosher conversion. It doesn't matter if Orthodox, Reform, or Conservative perform that conversion. I'm just trying to explain to you what their charter teaches, apart from what some good Reform kosher Jews may believe. I mean, there's some conservative synagogues that have kosher minyanim, and that they have minyanim that Orthodox Jews attend, even though it's a conservative synagogue. But it really depends who your rabbi is. I've heard rabbis teach that it's forbidden to enter a conservative synagogue. They also say it's forbidden to enter a Reform synagogue. They'll teach that. They'll even teach that it's forbidden to enter some Orthodox synagogues if the bima is in the front instead of in the middle. So I'm here to just give you the facts. I'll give you the halacha, and I'll just sort of like splash my opinion on it.
Something that seems just so silly to me is just this whole, this isn't kosher, that's not kosher, this isn't traditional, that's not traditional, so we're all going to just not get along. That I just don't get that,
Mm-hmm. But the Torah is about separation. Now, you could put the word kosher aside. Kosher just means fit, that it aligns or doesn't align to Torah values or the Torah standard. I'm sure there's areas in your life where you would say that what's good for you is good for others. And what some people do, you don't endorse, or you don't allow those people to speak for you. It's all a matter of degree. I mean, for sure, I'm sure everyone here wouldn't align themselves with child molesters and murderers. Well, that's almost how the Torah views people who hold Reform values. People who teach that it's okay to live a public homosexual lifestyle. Right? I mean, God calls this a toeva, an abomination. We have to make a distinction here. We just can't say, everything is kosher, because then nothing's kosher. Right? God said what's allowed. God said what's fit. I do agree that some people take it too far and start excluding and calling names because of things that are not authoritative, because of their own personal opinions. There's many rabbis online, just because one other rabbi will give a philosophical opinion that he disagrees with, he'll throw that rabbi under the bus. I don't do that. But if that rabbi is going against an actual law, it's our duty. Actually, it's a mitzvah. It's called tochacha. So tochacha means to rebuke your brother in order to bring them back to the path. But he would actually have to be deviating from the path, not just deviating from something you don't like. So that path is Torah. There's another principle. It's called Musar. So Musar is to basically confront people in a loving manner, showing them what they're doing wrong so they can come back to that proper path. But let's not get stuck on first stage thinking. Only because something or someone happens to disagree with what your rabbi says doesn't mean that they're wrong, doesn't mean that they're not kosher. But this is why it's good to know what the Torah says and what Rabbinic Judaism says, or Halakha says, which is not as big as many rabbis make it seem, is not that complicated. And I'll tell you, most Orthodox rabbis do not go against Halakha. This is why, as much as I criticize some of them, I'll criticize some of them because they're mistreating other people, but not because they're desecrating the Torah. I mean, you really have to try to desecrate the Torah to really make a Chilul Hashem, and that's really what Reform Judaism does. Conservative Judaism doesn't even do that, but Reform, that's already.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that about Reform Judaism, that you don't have to believe Torah's emes. You don't have to believe Moses existed.
Well, you don't have to circumcise yourself. Like, you don't even need to go to a mikvah to convert. It's really optional.
Right.
Now there are more traditional Reform synagogues and less traditional. But Hebrew Union College, that's one thing that conservative and Reform Judaism have over Orthodoxy, that they're a lot more organized. Conservative Judaism runs under what's called the Rabbinical Assembly. So when you guys convert, like if you convert conservative, you'll get a certificate from the Rabbinical Assembly that's accepted to make Aliyah. By the way, the Rabbanut won't accept it, but the Sochnut will, the Jewish agency will. That means you could live there, you could join the army, but so you just won't be able to get married or put your kids in Orthodox schools. But when you're there, you could always upgrade your conversion. So that's one way to get your foot in the door. Reform is also very organized. Also, like if you convert Reform, you could also make Aliyah. And
so
I guess
would that go to that other person's question about maybe starting off with Reform, maybe just going there, getting to know the culture, and then you can work your way up the ladder, so to speak, sleeping upwards, So
like if you're religiously strong, absolutely. I always tell people that you're never going to find a synagogue where you agree with the rabbi 100%. However,
but it's possible that you can sort of get hooked on that and sort of get trapped there.
That's my point. That if you have children or a wife or a husband who's less knowledgeable, that could hurt them and confuse them, because if you put a kid in a Sunday school class or like a Hebrew school class in a Reform synagogue, and they're telling the kid, oh, it's okay if you marry someone from the same sex. It doesn't matter if you eat pork. It doesn't matter if you eat shrimp. So that's going to confuse them. And also, don't fool yourself. The Reform movement as it exists today is just really just another wing of left-wing academia and the Democrat Party. Whether you're Democratic or not, it's hard to deny that. They almost in unison
getting political on
go
us,
together. If you're conservative, perhaps you wouldn't want to expose your children to that. However, if you're single, heck, I would encourage you to visit a mosque just to see what they do. All right. I mean, sometimes it's good to know what not to believe, but I wouldn't expose people who are not religiously mature to that. All right. Because they get confused them. Yeah.
Okay, good.